about this?
These two people.
I am geeking out.
To the Geeks Unleashed Podcast.
Mark!
Jasmine!
What a nerd.
Nerd alert!
Unleashed television.
What are you talking about?
Anything can be a podcast.
Video game.
What is a geek?
Oh, hi, Mark. The whole point is, of course, the plot is...
You guys have great conversation.
I am geeking out.
Unleashed! Movies! People love movies!
All right, you guys, podcast time.
You're listening to the Geeks Unleashed Podcast. Part of the Basic Family Badass. We take our passions and our fandoms and we turn them into conversations with you.
Hello and welcome to Geeks Unleashed. This is episode 150.
Wow.
As usual, I'm Mark. Yeah, I know. As usual, I'm Mark.
I'm Jasmine.
In this episode, we're going to completely throw you off and we're going to reflect on the last 150 episodes of Geeks Unleashed, all the way from episode 1 to where we are now.
Yep, we're talking about ourselves this week. You're welcome. I'm super.
I've got my beer ready.
Oh, I have my water in my Wonder Woman cup. Yay!
Go get your shots.
I totally forgot to buy some. I knew I was forgetting something at the store earlier this week. My bad.
Oh, I can't.
I'll get feisty with my water. Don't worry. Oh man, 150 episodes. Who knew? I don't think I had projected that at the beginning.
I think we said it every time, like episode 25, episode 50.
Yeah.
And then I think when 100 came, we were like, but then when 150 was coming along, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I think
that felt significant for some reason.
100 we just did we did a normal-ish episode, but we also changed things. But anyway, did you want to do that before?
Oh, my bad. I forgot. Sorry.
That's what I was waiting for.
150. See, it's sure, it's water. It's just water. It's just water. Okay, so before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We'd also love it if you would leave us we would love it if you would like this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, we appreciate that as well. We'd also very much love it if you would leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser.
Also, please feel free to donate to us and keep
the lights on for another 850 episodes.
So no, we were kind of, so just to set the scene here, me and Jasmine, we had a few phone calls and we were chatting about what should we do for 150, and we went back and forth on having guests on or doing this and doing quizzes and doing this and that. And then we were just, I don't know, we were just kind of mulling the idea of actually, wouldn't it be nice to sit back and reflect a little bit on the journey of the podcast? And I know that's very, self-indulgent.
We're allowed.
But
we're allowed.
We kind of just felt like it was a bit of an achievement. So I don't know, we haven't honestly got the facts here. But in terms of how we got started, people may or may not have heard us say that a long time ago, I created a website and I literally just went and created it. I spoke to a couple of people who said they would join me, and actually those people I spoke to never ended up joining me. So I ended up creating a website. I just created Geeks Unleashed, and I just started throwing up a couple of news bits and reviews on my own. And then a few people saw it and they were like, oh, can I come write for your website? It's like, okay, cool. Website got cracking. And I think it was well over a year and a half before Jasmine actually ended up joining the website. And then we ended up pretty much running it together. And then my life just got a bit too busy. And basically we had a second child, and having a baby was getting exhausting. And I started a new job and all this kind of stuff. And decided to step away. Fast forward, me and Jasmine kept in touch. And actually, we talked every now and again about whether to do the website again, and in the end what we realized was we became managers of people, and we weren't getting paid by anybody, And we weren't CBR, we weren't Bleeding Cool, we weren't all those big names. We were just some small people trying to build a website, and it was like having a second job. And actually, it was taken away from what we actually love, and that's
it was taking the fun out of it.
Yeah, it was taking the fun out of it. I started Geeks Unleashed originally as a website because I enjoyed talking about comics and video games and movies and TV shows. And in the beginning, when it first started, I was doing that, and I was like, "Oh, I'm enjoying this." Anyway, the fun went. So I picked for about a year or two, even 2 years. I kept saying to Jasmine, "We should do a podcast. We should do a podcast." But life's always busy, and it's difficult to kind of start something when you're busy and you're running around a million miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2020, I think it was the end of February, start of March, the world crashed around the world. Everybody, streets were silent. Yeah, you could walk into any major city. I'm sure Houston, London, New York.
It all felt like The Walking Dead, man. Just like
it literally became like a ghost town. And I'll be honest, I didn't like the idea that I couldn't see people. So COVID-19 happened, and I just rang up Jasmine and said, "Let's just do it. Let's go. Let's start the podcast. Let's do it." And so we muled around some ideas of what Geeks Unleashed could look like as a podcast, and the idea was that we'd make it a current news and review show. Like we'd have a chit chat at the beginning. We'd have 3 segments, be some news, and then we review something current from that week. And that was great at the time because we weren't going out, we weren't doing stuff, weren't seeing friends, weren't seeing family, and
we had all the time in the world.
Well, yeah, we had all the time in the world, but everybody was seeing all their friends and family on Zooms and stuff like that, and doing quizzes with their all those silly family quizzes or friend quizzes. I even ran one. I ran one once with some friends, bunch of friends, got them all on Zoom, and we had a couple of beers on a Friday night. It was quite nice, actually. Just sent them on my Zoom link, and everybody jumped on. It was all right. And some of those friends have met in the past, but years apart, and it was nice. But anyway, come back to the podcast. So we decided to give it a go, and we jumped in. And our first ever episode, we reviewed
Space Force.
Space Force, yeah, and the 80th anniversary of the Joker graphic novel or sort of small comic book that came out that week. And then we carried on doing it, and it was great. And then that kind of format went for a while. Episode 50 was the first time we kind of changed the format slightly. We threw in conversations, and along the journey, we had many different formats, from pilot season.
Season.
Yeah. And so we changed around the format.
Yeah.
It wasn't until episode 100 where we actually got a format that we decided will be the format, and from episode 100 until episode 149 we've had that format, which is that actually Geeks Unleashed evolved.
Yeah,
because it came out of, I think, the fact that we both realized we were really busy, and it was difficult to constantly review new stuff.
Yeah,
but equally there was always new stuff on that sometimes we'd be like, actually there's nothing on this week that either of us want to watch.
Yeah.
And so and then over the period, we sometimes came up with themes as well, especially during those lulls of actually there's not anything on the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
However, so from episode 100 to as of last episode, our show became actually an adapted content review show, and we created the sort of the Geek of the Week, which would be something from our own lives, because Jasmine and me obviously have our own tastes and things we like, and some of those tastes do merge or become similar and stuff like that. But actually actually it's quite a nice way of learning from each other, because I learned about webtoons the other day, and I didn't know anything about webtoons, and I'm sure Jasmine's equally learned things from me, especially English words. And
yes, so I always get an education on how you Brits do it.
And so the Geek of the Week was talk more about features, and then obviously adapted content where we're reviewing stuff that's adapted from films or TV shows. Sorry, from comic books or video games. So comic books or video games. And that's kind of how we got started to where we are now. And I've tried to summarize it, but yeah, any thoughts on that?
No, that's pretty much how it started. We realized we were getting busier when everything started to open up again. 2021 was kind of when it was like, we're doing too much. like there's too much that we're trying to squeeze into every episode. So it felt so much better to just kind of pull back a little bit and focus on just one thing. So I like the format change, definitely, because then it's like it doesn't feel like a chore. Like I don't feel like I have homework in order to do the podcast. It's just kind of like, hey, this is what we're doing this week. Great, I'll see you on Friday.
For me, I think though, it feels a lot more fun now. If I'm honest, I didn't say that it was. I don't saying that now makes it sound like it wasn't fun before. It was fun, but I think we were trying to be.
The trends is hard.
But I think we were trying to be like professionals. Not saying we're not. To make them sound like we're terrible here. We're not. We are professional. But I think we were. I think the mindset I came in with this initially was, I want the podcast that like those iFanboys make or those whatever make, you know, and they get millions of listeners and they've been running for 20 years.
The people that are sponsored, the people that have been doing it for like 5, 6, 7 years before COVID. Yeah. Yeah,
and they built up a huge audience already, and that's the mindset I came in with. And I, over time, I've realized actually I can't be those people. Maybe we will, you never know. But I can't go into this now because actually when iFanboy started, there was hardly anybody that made comic book podcasts and various other people that make their theme related podcasts. And a lot of the new podcasts that come out that instantly blow up normally have some sort of celebrity attached or come from some network of you know crime podcasts, and they're in a chain or a network of podcasts. But to be the new guys like we were, to come in, you know, it's just there's no money, there's no celebrities. Actually, are people tuning in to Geeks Unleashed to hear current affairs? No, they're not, because actually they listen to Apple Podcasts or BBC News Podcasts or the podcasts that are, or NPR or the podcasts that are made by like CBR or etc. And I thought, to be honest, and that's kind of another thing I was reflecting on. Actually, let's stop trying to be these people and just be ourselves and actually just have fun with it. And I think that was probably a mindset that took a long time to have. But I pitched to you, and you were like, "Yeah, actually, let's change what we're doing." So
that's the moral of the story, kids. Don't try to be anyone else. Just be yourself.
yeah. So that's in a nutshell how we got started, right? I thought it's quite a reflective question before we jump into the actual episodes, but do you think during this period of time, now I know personally we've had journeys, but they may have also probably interlinked slightly with this podcast, but do you think there's anything you've learned about yourself while doing this?
Yeah, I think definitely I learned that you can always make time for the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
So like this podcast I carved out a space every week for 150 episodes to make room to do this, right? So it's like, it's possible. Like if it's something that you enjoy and it's something that you have fun with, and it's something that gives you an opportunity to have that tiny little bit of escapism every week, like, hell yeah. Like I have learned that I can make the time to do the things that I want to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I probably need to make more of that time, really. The gym has suffered for a while, so I was going really regularly, but it slipped away, and that's a mindset thing that I need to create that time again. It's not creating that time exists. I just need to get off my arse and go and do it. No, for me, what I learned about myself was, it's the podcast and the last few years have shown me that actually, for myself, I'm going to say, probably sound needy, but I need people. And whilst I know
COVID showed that to a lot of people, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy to be on my own. I'm quite happy to have a whole Saturday sitting on my own, or doing my own thing, or sitting there reading comics, or I'm more than happy to. And even in my working world, I'm happy to have a whole day where I get my head down, don't talk to people because I've got load to do today, and etc. There's a colleague of mine sometimes that will ring me and say, "Oh, I'm a bit worried about you. I haven't heard from you for the last 2 days." I'm like, "Because I've been busy."
I'm working.
I've got my head down. I haven't got time to speak to you. But then there are other days where they'll call me and I'm like, I'll chat to them for an hour. Anyway, but I think what I've actually come to realize is I'm actually quite good at networking. Good at meeting people. I'm good at talking to people.
Yeah, if it weren't for Mark, we would never have any guests on this podcast.
But what I need, whilst I am very sufficient at being on my own and capable of being on my own, I have realised that I do need people. I do need people contact. I need that society thing. But I also need variety in my life. And actually, in some ways, the adapted content thing has made me watch some things I probably never would have watched. So, and actually, even pre the adapted thing, there were things that we've done together that I probably wouldn't have done. So, yeah. In summary, I think I've just definitely learned that I need that sort of infusion of contact and people.
Mark is a social butterfly, y'all. You just don't even know.
Yeah. Probably. Right, okay, so we've got some bullet points here, and we've already done a little bit of written stuff here, but we'll just talk you through. Right, okay, so we've got over the 150 episodes. From time to time we've run some themes, so we'll like for 4 episodes, or not normally more than 4, actually 5 I think.
Yeah, about a month. Yeah,
it's usually been that we'll pick a month, and we used to run themes, and a lot of the time we did it when we were doing 2 things in an episode. So we might do, just for instance, we did a whole theme of Godzilla, but we'd also review something else that week. This is when we had loads of time. Yeah. So, but now if we do it, it will just be the theme, not an extra thing. So, during our time, have you had any favorite themes at all?
Yes. So one of my favorites, which was completely surprising to me because I was not excited about it when we first talked about it.
Oh yeah, I remember. I pitched it to you about a year before we did it.
Yeah. It was just because it wasn't a group that I was interested in. So it was like, I mean, sure, like we can do it, but like I don't really care. And so it was definitely one of those things. It ticked so many boxes. It was like something that was just surprisingly great that I didn't expect, something that was so much fun to talk about, something that was so much fun to like dig into and do the research about. But one of my favorite themes that we had was last year when we did that run of Fantastic Four episodes, where we started all the way at the beginning with that unreleased movie. Then we did the first 2, then the next 2, and then we also did the Doomed, the documentary. That run and that documentary just blew me out of the water. Like I was shocked at how much I enjoyed all of that backstory and all of the drama that went into that Fantastic Four franchise. So that was just so much fun because I learned so much stuff that I just did not know before.
I think that's been the interesting thing throughout our journey, is things we've learned.
Yeah.
Through content that we've consumed, but also the research. But equally, people that we've either had on the show or even going on other people's shows. So I'll jump on and join you here. I love that Fantastic Four run as well, and I'm surprised. Whilst I know I pitched it to you, I'm surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah.
As well. Now, I think when I did the original pitch to you, I wasn't going to include the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just the 4 films, and then I think it was because when we pitched it, when we did it, it was a 5-week month, and then I said to you, actually, let's throw the documentary in there as well, and that's kind of an episode for each week. Oh, do you know what it was? It's because we were both away. Little secret here. We were both away for a good chunk of May. Like, Jasmine was away for about 3 weeks, and then I was away for a week or 2.
Because I went to Europe. Yes.
And we pre-recorded them all. So sorry, spoilers here. We pre-recorded all those episodes, and we recorded them. Actually, we started it in January last year. We kind of just did it every time we had a spare thing and got it done. No, we did record it quite quickly. Like when we did it in the backlog, and then because we were kind of doing 2 a week to get it done, so that's why it was quite fresh in our minds when we were doing it. And then I said to you, actually, I think we should do the documentary as well. So that, I worked out with us both being away for May, that would fit quite nicely. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, go on then. Like, we'd never done a documentary before, and that documentary really strengthened, I think, our knowledge of the Fantastic Four films.
Yeah, definitely.
But actually how vital the unreleased movie was to even the current, the latest release of it. Because if that unreleased movie had never happened, those other films would never have happened.
Exactly.
And it was so key to that one film. But yeah, no, it's just amazing how much we've learned ourselves. So
yeah.
You've written another one down. Do you want to?
Oh, you reminded me when we were talking before the podcast, but when we covered, this was right around the time that No Way Home was released, and we did a run up of the Spider films, except for Into the Spider-Verse. We did a separate run for that, but that was so much fun to revisit, because when I was in high school, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films were some of my favorite films of all time. Like, I was obsessed with Spider-Man for a good 5 years. But I had never seen the Andrew Garfield movies. And so it was really fun to revisit all of that. Oh, and to see, like, I don't know, I guess, like, I just was not interested in a new Spider-Man right after the Tobey Maguire film. So that's why I never saw the Andrew Garfield ones. Of course, like, I had seen the Tom Holland films because I think he's a great Spider-Man, but it was just a lot of fun to revisit it. And then to cap it all off with the movie where we got all three Spider-Man in the same movie was just like the cherry on top. Like, that was just so fun.
Yeah. That was the last $1 billion movie that they made, Disney, to like the Marvel film. I mean. No, I enjoyed that Spider-Man run, and that again, I think, was something, because we just before that Spider-Man run, we've been reviewing constantly, like, new content, like we said earlier, and that was the first time we actually really deviated from that. Because I said it to you, actually, because I was so excited for No Way Home.
Yeah,
I said to you, do you fancy, actually, rather than doing the usual regular what's been out that week stuff, why don't we just go back and do the Spider-Man films? And I loved it as well. But no, just, I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but that Amazing Spider-Man movie that came out of Andrew Garfield, no issue with him. I think he actually was all right in the end. But I didn't go and see Amazing Spider-Man until its like final week in cinemas, because I was so mad that there was no Tobey Maguire movie, that they'd given up and they'd moved on from Tobey Maguire. I was so mad about it. Like, I couldn't get my mind round.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Look, I know Spider-Man 3 was terrible, but actually just do a 4. Like, nobody, no offense, but nobody wanted that Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, no, it was a big deal. Like, I remember there was so much controversy about, and again, that's why I never saw those movies. I was like, no, I'm not going to go see them. There's no Tobey Maguire.
However, I think in the long run, it all worked out, because having those two show up in No Way Home was amazing. Like, and that redemptive moment when Andrew Garfield saves MJ, that was just, was brilliant. It was actually like they kind of put it all together. Like, they just, it all came together. Those three franchises all came together almost in that final moment, like when they, in that battle at the end. Anyway, I loved that too, that run. The other two runs I wanted to shout out was, I loved it when we did the Godzilla run. There was a Godzilla month we did.
Oh yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, doing it. Whilst I'd watched them all previously, I love doing it with you, because I know me and you both love those type of films. But I also enjoyed the fact that I had people mentioning it to us, like, outside the podcast, like friends we've made from the podcast. They would say, "Oh, I really enjoyed your Godzilla run."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's nice to hear." Like, that was nice.
Definitely.
I like that. And then the other run I wanted to shout out was, and this was last year too. We did it for 5 weeks, actually. We did the Blade, so we did all 3 Blade films, and then we split the TV series into two episodes.
Which I hadn't seen the series before, so that was a nice kind of thing to see. Yeah,
no, that's the other thing I enjoy sometimes when, and you've done it to me. You've given me content that we've reviewed on the podcast that I've never consumed. That's something that's more up your alley, and vice versa. And I remember watching the show when it came out, and I absolutely loved it. So it was great to be able to sort of share that with you. But what I loved was, I've never sat down before and watched them in one after the other every week consecutively, and watching those movies kind of bleed into each other into the TV show, and you realise, because they're all part of the same universe, and it is actually the same. Whilst they recast him for the TV show Blade, that is, with sticky fingers. It was great to see that same world. Like I love world building. So when they had the TV show, it gave us a chance to world build with the Blade from the films. And whilst they don't directly mention everything from the trilogy, they do mention stuff from the trilogy, especially Karen from the first movie, and they use the serum, and etc. etc. I don't know. I love doing that theme. I think I really do get it. I do really get into when we do themes. I do love the coming back and this is what we learned last week. We build on our own knowledge and
but it's fun because when they first came out, you didn't have that opportunity to watch them back to back, right? Because there's always a couple of years between features. So getting to do that and like not have to wait, it's a totally different viewing experience too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So it's a nice little segue here into throughout Geeks Unleashed's podcast history. Actually, the website kind of did the same thing for me sometimes as well, that I'd end up going and doing this, finding out something new. But with the podcast, it was different because we were doing it together. So what's the best thing for introducing us to something new? I mean, do you want to go first?
Yeah, but I think we should talk about the things that we have in common here, because I thought that was funny that we picked some of the same stuff.
On the favorite themes, you mean? Not?
Yeah. No, introducing you to something new.
Oh, okay.
So like one of the first ones, which this was a super early episode, we covered Firepower.
Oh, that was a random thing. Yeah, that was random.
Because they came out with like an issue 0, where it was an entire trade as an issue 0 that was like a prequel to the floppy series that they were getting ready to do. And so we read the trade and I was like, oh my God, this is really good. And I actually kept collecting the floppies up to, I want to say I got like the first 12 issues and then I kind of fell off the wagon. But Firepower was not something I ever would have picked up, like if I were walking through the comic shop and saw a cover. But the fact that we did it on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, this is a really fun story. Like it captured so much of what I love about like old style like kung fu movies, and just like the silliness and the seriousness all mixed up together. Firepower was definitely one of the first ones where it was just kind of like, oh my God, this is really cool.
I remember that. So where I live, there used to be a comic book shop in town. Unfortunately, it's closed down and gone out of business. And I walked in there, and it was during COVID, and I'm wondering if it's when the first amount of, maybe they were still, I don't know, maybe they were letting you go in. I can't remember. I can't exactly remember now. It was during COVID because it was obviously only episode 4 that we reviewed, that graphic novel. But I remember them letting me in the shops. I don't know whether they were reopened. I can't remember the details now, but I went in there and I saw the graphic novel. Never heard of it. Like I know who Robert Kirkman is, the guy who created The Walking Dead. And I saw it and I was like, I never read The Walking Dead when it came out. So I saw that and I was like, okay, like let's give it a go. I bought it and I think we were going to cover something else that week. I got home and I read it and I was like, wow, this is really good. And I loved reading that whole graphic novel from start to finish. It was amazing. And I texted you and you went, okay, I'll go to the comic book shop and pick it up. And you were like, yeah, let's cover it. And then I'm the same as you. I got up to about issue 10 or 12, and then I dropped it. And I found that the issues, unfortunately, didn't contain the same level of punch. And what I want to do is I'm going to make an assumption they'll release eventually a collected edition of the whole lot. And I'll just do that.
If they ever do an omnibus for Firepower, I would definitely get it.
It reads a lot better collected than it did. Every monthly, it was a drag because they were fine issues.
Yeah, but they're episodic and they play off of each other, and so it was just very much like nothing happened this week.
I know that's what it became like. In the end, it was like, you know what, nothing happened. And then I was like, you know what, I can't keep buying this. So, and then we both mentioned a similar thing as well. Yes. And this was the same thing again. So I remember I went down to my parents' holiday home for a weekend with the girls. It was during COVID, so you had to go into shops with masks on. I remember this, and I went into the comic book shop near my family's holiday home is, and I went and saw on the shelf this graphic novel. Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips is Pulp. And I was like, why not? So I just picked it up, got it back, read it that evening. And I was like, we should cover this on the podcast.
Yes.
And
I bought it digital at first so that we could record the episode. And I loved it so much that I also went out and picked up my own hard copy. Like, that's how good this book was so good. I bought it twice.
I've done things like that. I have, but the book's so good they bought it twice.
Yeah. Because I am trying to get away from buying like individual copies of things now, especially unless it's a trade. Like I don't mind collected trades, but I don't like single issues anymore. So especially it was something like, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. And then when I read it, like before I even finished the book, I got halfway through and I called my comic shop and they were like, we're actually sold out, because we reviewed it pretty quickly after it came out. And my comic shop was like, we're sold out, but I'm getting new copies in 2 weeks. You want me to put your name on the list and I'll call you when it's here? And I was like, yes. And so they put me on the list and called me when it finally came in, and I ran over and like picked it up. So yes, I paid for this book twice. It was that good.
Okay, so the two other things you've got on there are comic related. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so that's probably my biggest like gap. I don't really read traditional comics. And so a lot of what we did with Geeks Unleashed was kind of like, oh, this is cool. Like, I've heard this is doing well. Let's take a look at this one. So one of the other ones that I really liked that kind of introduced me to something new was episode 25. We covered Sea of Sorrows. And that was like a comic book theme that I had never ever read before. It's like a super dark version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like, it was just really dark, really moody, but it was really cool. But again, it's not something that I ever would have picked up on my own. And so I did enjoy it.
You suggested it to me. Because it was you who made that suggestion.
Because but I can't remember where I saw that from. Like, it was somebody somewhere, it like in our circle or something was talking about it, and I was like, this looks weird but cool. And we did 6 issues, I think.
No, we just did the one episode, but you carried on reading it outside of the episode because you were like, it's so good. Yeah. I didn't carry on. No, there was no issue. I just didn't carry on.
Unlike anything that I had read. So that was definitely interesting. And then the other one was one you had been talking about for a really, really long time. And I think you just finally were like, how come you're not reading it? And I was like, and you were like, okay, we're going to cover it on the podcast. And so finally episode 72, when we did Something is Killing the Children. And that was really cool. Like, I really enjoyed that, reading that book.
We did the first 20 issues.
Yeah.
We did the first 20 issues. And to be fair, because I've culled a lot of my single issues, I have actually stopped buying single issues. I still have the first 20. What I've decided at some point, I will just buy the collected editions. I still get some single issues, but I've culled a lot of the single issues. And what ruined it for me with Something is Killing the Children, James Tynion started releasing loads of spin-offs. And I was like, so that you end up having to buy like 3 books of Something is Killing the Children.
Yeah, because right after that was House of Slaughter.
Yeah, there's House of Slaughter, and I think he's released some other things. And I'm like, okay, now this is just ruining it now. You're just making it like reading the Batman books. But I will buy the collected edition of that at some point. So, but right, okay, I wanted to shout out. Yeah, we've done £5 Pulp, but the other thing I want to shout, and this is definitely because of you. We've covered a lot of anime over the years on the podcast, and I forgot the name of it. There was that anime which went on had 2 seasons, and
the Adune Chronicles.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought I'd forgotten to try that on my list, but I really loved that. I was actually, whilst it wasn't, I don't think it blew up as much as they hoped it would, and I don't think they're going to make any more.
Yeah, but it was really cool because it was a Spanish
anime. Yeah.
Anime, yeah.
No, I liked that a lot. And then the other one, we reviewed the whole first season of Jujutsu Kaisen, which was just amazing. I loved all of that. And because it's an adaptation of a manga, I would like it if we covered season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen at some point. That's a goal for the future. But no, I thought Jujutsu Kaisen was amazing. I didn't like the first episode too much when he started eating fingers and stuff. I thought it was a bit weird. But other than that, I got really into it. And some of the fight scenes were amazing. And the music as well. So cool. Yeah, the animation, music. And that is, honestly, I can swear to you, that's not a show I would have picked up on my own.
Yeah, that one made me really happy when you actually enjoyed it. I was like, yes!
I can't remember, like, if I said to you, let's do it, or whatever it was. But because I think sometimes I think when I was building into what we should do, I did start to factor in more stuff I thought you would like, as in the anime and stuff. Because at the time you were going through this, I remember you called it anime renaissance or something. Because you were like,
yes, you
got really heavily into anime. I know you've calmed down with that now, but anyway, let's move on to the worst things that we've watched or read as part.
Oh boy!
So, well, we'll sort of whiz through this, I guess. But
we have three in common.
Do you want to shout out the ones in common?
Yes. Okay. So starting at the beginning, the one that we have in common, episode 16, The Devil All the Time, was a Netflix movie starring Tom Holland. It was awful. It was like depressing. It was sad. It was just like rage inducing, and nobody wins in the end. Like nobody gets any kind of happy ending. They all end up miserable. Like nothing has changed. And it's like, why did I watch this movie? This is terrible. Nothing is resolved at the end of the film.
It was really hard to watch. I remember watching it, really like forcing myself to get through it.
Yeah.
You'd already watched it. And I remember even saying to my wife, I'm really struggling with this film. She's like, why don't you just stop watching it? Oh, I can't now. Jasmine's already watched it. I feel really awful to text her saying, oh, I can't watch this. This is awful. It was honestly such a soul destroying movie.
Yes.
It was just,
yes.
And I don't get me wrong, I've got no problem with watching a bleak movie. I've watched plenty of bleak movies over the years, but it really was the bleakest and horriblest of movies that I've seen.
More awful than Requiem for a Dream. At least Requiem for a Dream had like excellent directing or something else to go with it, but this film had none of that. It was just awful. It was just like horrible thing after horrible thing after horrible thing happened to all of the characters in the movie, and then no one gets any redemption at the end. It was just such a waste of time.
And to make it worse, in the same episode, we reviewed the first 2 or 3 episodes of something of a TV show called The Third.
I remember that.
No, sorry, what's it called? The Third. And I can't remember. Somebody famous was in it, and it was just awful. And I remember that whole episode. I remember when the episode finished, we said to each other, how did we pick all these awful, depressing things? And I remember it was actually one of the most kind of depressing episodes we had. It was just a content of bleak, and it was awful.
Anyway, skip episode 16 if you are trying to go back and do your own review.
Yeah.
The other one that we had in common was Cult of Dracula. So that was
well, before you talk about that, before we talk about Cult of Dracula, the other one we had in common was Man Thing.
Oh yes, Man Thing.
Come back to Cult of Dracula. Man Thing, one of the worst movies ever made.
I can see why they decided, never mind, this is going straight to video.
Yeah, it was a real sort of 70s C movie, D movie level.
But not 70s. It was.
Yeah, I know it wasn't from the 70s. It was like from the 2000s.
Early 90s.
Was it early? No, was it 90s? Oh, I can't remember.
Maybe it was late 90s.
It was either late 90s or early 2000s. But I think Marvel were hoping for a bit of a win. I think Marvel funded it themselves.
But they were very hands off, and it was the Marvel that Avi Arad was still in charge of. So it was very, very like early stage Marvel, and it was just, oh my god, it was terrible. The graphics were terrible, the acting was terrible. It was just like, what is happening in this movie?
It's like Marvel's version of a porno. That's probably the best way of putting it.
So bizarre, like. So, and it was just like racist for no reason. Like, I mean, there was just
do you need a reason?
No point to the racism.
I don't think you need a reason, but anyway. Right, now the one you just mentioned a minute ago, Cult of Dracula, I wanted to save that.
Episode 66. Okay, this is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to us, like as podcast hosts. So we got it. We got advanced copies from the publisher.
We used to do a lot of, when we were doing the comics.
We used to do a lot more comic reviews.
Like we would get PDFs and we review. We got all the podcast episodes, sorry, all the PDFs of the Cult of Dracula.
It was 6
And I
issues.
think this was I think we were doing a horror month or something. I think so. And Cult of Dracula, we fed into it as one of the episodes. So we're kind of doing a theme of horror episodes. And we did Cult of Dracula, and we did all 6 issues. And like, I was reading it, and I was like, this is not just bad, this is another level bad. This is just, well, it's basically, it was crap. And when we were putting the episode together, I was also at the same time researching the background of it. And I remember when we recorded the episode, I said the background of the story of how this comic came to fruition is so much more interesting than the actual comic itself.
Yeah.
Because basically the writer's wife or fiance or someone had died, and she made him promise on her deathbed that he would actually do something with it. Because I think at some point he deleted the whole content, and she actually kept a copy of it. And also got turned. He also made it as a small independent stage show and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we reviewed it, and during the episode, we clearly beat it to death.
Oh my god.
You're the one
We tried
who
so
picked it
hard
up.
not to shit on it, but it just nothing worked. None of the themes worked. The like plot didn't make any sense. The actions that the characters were taking in the book didn't make any sense. And so after we released that episode, the author reached out to us directly and was like, hey, I would love to know more about why you didn't like the book. And me and Mark were like, this has never happened to us before. Like, and so we just kind of like collaborated. We came up with a response, and we replied back.
I messaged you saying I don't know what to say to this guy.
Yeah, because like I got that email and I was like, oh my god, seriously? Like, and so I don't remember what I said, but he emailed back and he was like, well, if I ever redo it and re-release it, could I send it to you guys and you review it again? And I was like, sure.
Well, I think he said, if I make a sequel, will you do that as well, or whatever it was? And we were like, yeah, okay. But he did say, I take on board a lot of what you said. Like, he wasn't necessarily, I think he was hurt, but he also took on board the things we said. Like,
because we weren't mean about it. Like, we were not nice about our dislike of the book, but we didn't just trash the author in the episode either, you know?
No.
So yeah. But that was definitely a weird one for the creator to reach out and be like, hey, I heard you didn't like my book.
Yeah, we've never had anyone really reach out for anything. Although, to be fair, we've not thrown many things under the bus. Although some things you may not like or that I don't like, that I like, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Some things we both think are terrible, but this is the first time anyone's ever reached out to us and was like, the F. But yeah, anyway, so I just had on my list Man Thing, Cult of Dracula, and that Devil All the Time. But what about you? There were some gaps that
there was another bad comic that we read called Black Cotton. And I remember that one because I think it happened when we had that massive freeze down here and I was like displaced for a week. But like that one was so bad that we reached out to a few other like people in our circle and we were like, hey, have you read this? And they were like, yeah. And we were like, what did you think? And they were like, and I was like,
did we do that as sort of Black History Month? We did a whole month for Black History Month.
And I've regretted reading that book. Like it was oh god. Now okay, so Cult of Dracula was bad, but Cult of Dracula was bad in the sense that if this is a Dracula story, this is not the way to do it. Black Cotton was bad because it was trying to flop race and like politics. It was just like you are putting entirely too much into this book, but you're getting all of the nuance wrong. It was yeah.
And I think, do you know what? Us reading that book, and I remember me and you, we talked off air as well, but that led to us, I believe, from memory, the following week, and it wasn't planned, the following week reviewing the first season of Noughts and Crosses, where they also flipped it.
Yes, and they did it so well.
Yeah. So I think, because I remember you talking to me off air about how you couldn't get your mind around that comic, and I said to, and I remember chatting to you saying, actually, I'd heard about this TV show, Noughts and Crosses, but where they flipped racism as well. And I said, I don't know if we've got time. I think it was 6 episodes. Do you want to cover it? And you were like, yeah, actually, let's cover it. And so
Yeah, that was a whole like complete shift. But yeah, Black Cotton was terrible. And then the other thing I had on here was Morbius. That movie was so bad.
It was a bad film.
I fast forwarded through most of it.
It was about. I went to the cinema to see it. You saw it digitally. I went to cinema and saw it, and I had to sit through the whole thing. Now, I mean, the main problem with it for me was the lead actor, and what was he? 30 Seconds of Mars or something? What's his name?
Jared Leto.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's awful and absolutely everything. He should just stop acting. Like he's just so bad. Like I think he's just so arrogant that he can't see how bad he is. Isn't he isn't he one of these method actors? Isn't that what?
Yeah, because remember there was a little drama on the set of Suicide Squad where he sent all of his castmates dead rats.
Just idiot.
And then you wonder why you have a hard time getting along with people on set. Come on, dude. You can do all the method acting that you want, but don't pull me into it with freaking dead rats. Gross.
Imagine opening a box to a dead rat. Oh yeah. I'll probably tell you off air what I'd say. Right, okay.
Geeks Unleashed After Dark.
Oh, Geeks Unleashed, not having to worry about my career. Right, so anyway, right. Outside of our normal episodes, so this is episode 150, and I can't remember when it was, a month, 2 months in. I said to Jasmine, do you fancy doing a book club? And for the first year, we did it quite regularly. Second year, not so much. Third year, not so much. And this year, we're hoping to do 3 or 4 this year. But we might switch them out with the weekly episodes. That we're busy people, but we enjoy the book club episodes. We actually really enjoy them. We think they're great. We learn a lot from them.
Oh yeah.
And we always include a guest as well, which is actually really cool. I think one of the book clubs we didn't have a guest. I think one episode we did it on our own. Other than that, I think
find that one. I don't even remember that.
Oh, I've got this memory that one episode we did on our own. But other than that, we had fantastic guests, really knowledgeable guests that came to the party. So
yes.
The episodes are called Geeks Unleashed, Late to the Party. Yeah, so it was Late to the Party, which is a name that Jasmine came up with. How I pitched it to Jasmine was, I'd love to do a book club where we go back and look at essentially essential graphic novels, or what people deem as essential graphic novels. Because I've got to put my hand up, whilst I'm a lover of comics, I tend to buy new comics. I don't tend to go back and read old stuff. And
right.
I said there's so many things I've never read that people go, oh yeah, have you not read that? Have you not read that? Like, and even within geek and pop culture, there's like people look down on you, unfortunately. So right. During our book clubs, I'll be honest, I love them all. I love all the book clubs. I think they're all great. It's difficult to say a favorite, but do you want to shout out some of your favorite episodes?
I do. So we have 2 in common. Our very first book club was a big one. It was V for Vendetta. Can't really see my book.
It wasn't our first one. It wasn't our first one, I don't think, was it?
Yeah, that was episode 1.
Oh, was it? Was it our first one?
Yep. Late to the Party, episode 1 is V for Vendetta. We had a guest on, Derek Flynn, who used to write for Geeks Unleashed a long, long time ago when it was a website. And he's like a musician and an actor, but he's Irish. And so this book and him as the guest was really cool because it was the first time we'd had 3 different countries represented on the podcast, talking about all the different types of politics and all of these things. Like, it was just the most interesting conversation. Like, it was so cool. It was so great to have someone like that to talk to this book specifically about. It was, we're coming off the heels where we still had craziness going on in the politics in 2020. It was one of the best book clubs. And it was our very first one. So I was super excited that we got such a big book and such a great conversation, like on our very first book club episode.
I do remember we did get quite heavily, we kind of deviated a little bit in the episode into talking about politics, but yeah. And Derek is a really super interesting guy, and it was difficult, but we did keep it to an hour, that episode. But I remember, like, at the time thinking, I'd carry on for another hour, but I did curb it. I did curb it off at an hour.
Yeah.
No, it was a great. And that V for Vendetta, in honesty, that's a book. I've owned this book for years and never read it.
Mhm.
And it's one of these books that all comic book fans are, you've got to read V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
And I just never got around to it. I picked it up a couple of times, and it's a really difficult read. It's a hard read. I don't mean because of the content. It's not aged well, I personally think, in terms of reading it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not unreadable, but
but it's definitely cringy nowadays. Like,
and it's like, in all honesty, it's really wordy. Like, it's not an easygoing book to sit down and relax to read. So I tried a couple of times to read it, and I think I finished it. It's probably like 10 minutes before we were meant to record. I really struggled to read it. I did enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, and I loved the experience of doing the podcast, especially having Derek on. It was amazing to have Derek on. So
yeah, I read it on an airplane, so I had 3.5 hours of uninterrupted reading.
So yeah, do you want to shout the other things you enjoyed?
Yeah, so the other one that we had in common was March, which is a book about John Lewis and his involvement in the civil rights movement, which I picked this book because when I was a kid, I was involved with a lot of community service and like doing all kinds of history projects on the civil rights movement and those types of things. So when I found out that there was a comic book about civil rights, I was like, thing. And I put some feelers out, and we got a recommendation for a guest, and she turned out to be a woman who actually has like a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Library Association, and she met John Lewis when this comic was released. So to be able to have her on the podcast while we're talking about this book was so incredible. Like, again, it's another one of the best conversations that we've had in the book club. And that's part of the reason why I like our book club so much, was because we spent a lot of the book club covering nonfiction graphic novels, which is not something that people talk about too much. But like, just being able to use graphic novels as a form of nonfiction storytelling, it's one of the things that I love the most about our book club. But yeah, so March, which is episode 5 of the book club. Great stuff.
Oh, and then you had another one.
And Akira. So Akira was the first time I was able to get Mark to read a manga. Like, that was super exciting. But like it's supposedly, one of the best mangas ever created, this, that, and the other. And at the time I had been following a creator who was doing a lot of like futuristic kind of stuff. And he was writing for the current run of the Blade Runner comics at the time. And so like, it took me probably 4 days to get up the courage to ask, but I asked him if he would come on as a guest to cover Akira with us, if he did. And it was just so cool to get his take, because he is, at the time, he's currently a comic creator in that same kind of genre, doing very futuristic kinds of things. So it was just a really fun conversation to have with somebody who's in the industry, but covering a book that is just like a giant of the industry. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Mellow Brown.
So like I said, I loved all the book clubs. I love the fact that we, for some reason, ended up with a theme over 4 years, where we've reviewed up to volume 4 of the Scott Pilgrim run with Robbie, rocking Robbie Billups of the Pop Culture Philosophers. Now, that was a bit like what you just said there. I never had a conversation with Robbie before, never met Robbie, never had any. Whilst I used to watch all of his videos, I never commented. I never had anything to do with Robbie, and I was kind of a bit of a fan, I guess, of what Robbie put out, and I just messaged Robbie and I said to him, "Do you fancy coming on my podcast?" And I pitched him.
Mark is the one. Like, Mark will reach out to anybody, because Mark also, that's how you got Tony Fleeks to come on.
Yeah. Well, I reached out to him, and I basically said to him, "Look, I'm starting this. We've run this podcast. We've run it for a while, but we're starting this book club." And I pitched him a couple of the books that we were wanting to cover, and I kind of and a lot of them were ones we covered with other people. But I pitched him ones that we wanted to cover over the next 5 episodes of the. I think we wrote a list of the 5 or 6 podcasts for the book club we were going to cover, and I sent him the list, and he basically said no to all of them, other than the Scott Pilgrim Volume 1. He went, actually, he said, I've read it, but let's do that. And then the following year, I was like, actually, let's do Volume 2. And it was completely by just a random thought I had. I was like, let's just do it again, because it was in December. And then I was like, well, actually, now we've done Volume 1 and Volume 2, we've just got to keep going. So, and then actually meeting Robbie in some ways was quite a significant moment for our podcast, because through him, we've ended up meeting a lot of the people that he knows through the pop culture philosophers. And then we ended up becoming actually part of a group ourselves called the Bad Batch. And that led to myself and you, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but me, other people, but that's Scott Pilgrim Run I love. I'm just going to quickly whiz through these because I know we're a bit conscious of time here. Finally covered the Long Halloween, Batman Long Halloween, where we had one half of the Oblivion Bar podcast come on, which was really cool. Finally covered Mouse, which was amazing. That's again a book that's been on my shelf for years, never covered it.
Yeah.
And then I loved also, again, I had actually read this when it originally came out, but The Killing Joke, you hadn't read it, but we covered it together and it was amazing. Whilst we criticised this quite heavily, it was a really good episode, and some people said they'd listened to our episode and they loved our take on our thoughts on The Killing Joke. So for me, I loved all of those things. Right. From episode 50, when episode 50 came around of the podcast, we were like, oh, it's 50 episodes, crazy. What should we do?
Yeah.
And I just said, I couldn't think of anything particularly crazy to do, you know. And I said, actually, why don't we interview someone? We'd never interviewed anyone before. And we weren't feeling particularly brave to go and interview someone we didn't know. I'm going to be honest, we weren't. So I was like, actually, why don't we interview Derek? So Derek had been on for V for Vendetta, but also he's a writer, and he's a musician, and he's an actor, and he's written novels that have been released, and he does a lot. So we brought him on for episode 50, and we interviewed him. And so the reason I'm saying this is because we're just going to talk about, I forgot to say what we're doing here, our favorite conversations episodes, and that's kind of came from episode 50. So and that for me was one of my favorite conversation style episodes. But what about yourself?
So this one was before we actually had the conversations like category, but we did, this was early on, at the end of 2020, we did a Christmas special where we had some guests on. Everybody brought a Christmas movie, and we had like a Christmas movie battle to see what the ultimate like Christmas movie was. And that was so fun. We had 5 people on. We all had different films picked. We pitched why our film should be the Christmas film like winner, and the winner came out to be Die Hard. But that was just a lot of fun, just kind of like hanging out, enjoying the end of the year with some of our internet friends, as they say. So that was one of my favorite episodes. And then as far as like the conversations episodes, we did one, it's episode 78 with Sean Pryor, who is a comic artist, and he's been in the industry for quite some time. I'm sorry, a comic writer, and he's been in the industry for quite some time. And I had been following him for a long time, and that was another person that was like, okay, it took me about a week to get up the courage to shoot that DM and be like, hey, so we got a podcast, we'd love to interview you. It's like, yeah, sure, no problem. That was just a really fun conversation to have with him.
I didn't know him, so I had to really prep for that, because I think the people I knew or had knowledge of, so the prep was slightly easier. I didn't know him, but honestly, he was so cool. I remember, like, sometimes you get these people on and you're like, I don't want this episode to end because you're actually really cool. But no, we should definitely get him back again. So conversations, I just want to whiz through these. Okay, so my birthday episode was cool. Like for my 40th birthday, which was weird. That was 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago. I was like, it was during COVID, so I didn't even have a party for my 40th. We did a family meal, but that was it. For your 40th, you want to do a big birthday. And a few of my friends that turned 40 that year also couldn't have birthdays. They did like virtual things, and you made video messages and all this. And I was like, I said to Jasmine, I can't do anything other than go for a family meal. So do you fancy like changing things up and having a bit of a Geeks Unleashed birthday party? So we invited Adam from Go Figure, and we invited Robbie along. And we did a theme, Master of the Universe, and we did like the cartoons, and we did a movie sort of chit chat. And Adam came along with a bunch of knowledge of He-Man, and it was just a really cool episode. I loved it. So
Yeah.
The other things I want to say is that meeting Robbie led to us meeting a lot of the pop culture philosophers people, and we had Jelani come on an episode where we reviewed Shang-Chi. Fable has come on, Link has come on, we've had Nick come on. But I want to be honest, one of the best conversations we've had was actually in person. Me and Jasmine met in person in New York. Fable came along, Big Herm came along from pop culture, from the Bad Batch. We also had Kay from what was formerly known as Paperbacks and Soundtracks, and we all met up in New York. And
that's the first time I met Mark in person, and we've known each other like 10 years.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, that's what I mean. We've known each other for 10 years, never met in person. So I flew to New York, my family. Jasmine flew up from Texas. The other three, they already live in New York. So we all met up, went to Midtown Comics, and then we ended up going drinking together. I didn't get back to my hotel room till like 2 a.m. We ended up going for like dollar pizza on the sidewalk, and it was just like we ended up just chatting like geek stuff and having beers together and drinking beers that are in cocktails and everything. It was just it was amazing. It was an amazing night, and it kind of, I see a lot of the photos that our friends that we've made online. They all meet up at comic conventions in America, and I still get jealous. But it was like nice to finally have a little bit of ourselves. So right, okay. So through our run, we've had some features, so we've run various features. But yeah, what's some of your favorite features that we've run?
So since we just talked about it, the episode, your 40th birthday episode, which was episode 62, where we did Masters of the Universe, I thought that movie was flipping terrible. Everybody else thought that I was weird. But there's a phrase in that film near the end of the film where one of the characters is like, we don't say goodbye, we say good journey. And so then at the very end, my sign off for every episode after that was good journey. And it used to drive Mark crazy. I think he's finally just like accepted it now. But
I think what it was is I think I ended that episode saying good journey to be funny. And then you were like, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunately become something that Jasmine won't stop doing. So
yes, nope, it's sticking until something else comes along and knocks it out. My other favorite feature is something we started doing at episode 115, which was Werewolf by Night. I started collecting fun facts about the production, about the film, about the casting, all that stuff. So fun facts that we talk about at the beginning of every episode before we get into the review. That's one of my favorite features. I really get a kick out of that.
So I like the fact that we used to do the news, and then we also used to do something at the end of the episode like recommendations, and I think we moved the recommendations to the front, etc. And I said to you, I think we dropped recommendations after a while because I was a bit like, sometimes I haven't got anything to recommend.
Yeah.
So
once we got busier, it was really hard.
Yeah. So we decided to curb the news, and then also we decided to curb it to actually just one review.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pitched to you, I said, actually, kind of bring recommendations back, but actually we do stuff outside the podcast. And that's how Geek of the Week got made, because it was like, there actually are things that I do on my own that I quite enjoy. So, and you were the same. And so I actually love that bit at the front, Geek of the Week. And
yeah, Geek of the Week is fun. I like it.
And I like the fact that, if we do have a guest on, we get them to do something from their Geek of the Week, or and the Geek of the Week, some things you shouted out, I've definitely learned about as well. And so I think that's great. And then other feature, I love the conversations one that we've had. Yeah. And I know last month we brought it back. I know it was a conversation between the two of us, but me and Jasmine have talked. We want to try and do something like that monthly, where we bring people in. We might not do it this month because this is kind of a conversation episode, but next month it would be good to have some people come on, and there's some conversations that we've kind of got ideas that we want to have. And that's so yeah. Right, okay. So I just thought I'd shout out some honorable mentions of things that I didn't include in anything like that. I loved episode 73, Venom 2. We had Tom from Two Brothers at a water cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved about that episode was that I mean, I didn't like it either, but you two especially didn't like Venom 2.
Yeah.
And it was so brilliant to have you and Tom like, can't believe you two made me, you made me watch this.
Yeah.
And, I love that whole thing. I didn't really include it in my, I should have done really, should have included my themes, was actually covering all the Spider-Man films. I love that as well. I should have shouted that out earlier, but yeah, it was an honorable mention. I love that, but not all the Spider-Man films, including the Spider-Verse ones. I'm glad that we've like covered all of them.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I want us to go and watch those 70s and 80s TV live action TV movies that they made. So,
oh, I'm not familiar with those.
Oh, I love those. So they were. I remember them being awful, but like,
of course.
Anyway,
one of my honorable mentions, and this one was like the first time that Mark and I were so stark in the way that we felt about something. But when we covered the Queen's Gambit, Mark was like, "Oh my God, this is the best TV show ever," and I was like, "Oh my God, that was the worst thing I have ever watched."
Oh, I forgot about that. Like, and I remember even friends of mine telling me, like, "What's wrong with your friend?" Like English.
I absolutely hated the Queen's Gambit. I was so shocked that you liked it so much.
Oh yeah, and I remember I watched it and I was like, "This is amazing!" Like, I watched it like within like a night or 2 nights or something like that. I binge watched it, and I was like, I text you going, "I know we hadn't planned to cover this, but we should definitely speak about this." And you went, "Okay, I'll watch it." Came on, and you were like, "This was awful." I was like, "What?"
I fast forwarded through. I watched the first 2 episodes, and then I fast forwarded through the next 6.
It was brilliant. It was so good.
Enjoy, and it pissed me off because she never paid that man his $10 back, and then he died.
I think Anna Taylor-Joy is a great actress. So, I'd seen her first in Peaky Blinders. So, anyway, 150 episodes in, not including book clubs or any other things. We've also guested on other people's, mainly Robbie's, and Fables. So we've done a lot. Like over the last 4 years. Well, it's almost 4 years as a junior. 4 years, we've done a lot. We've guessed on things. We've done a variety of stuff together. It's been amazing. Before we start recording this episode, I said to Jasmine, should we set ourselves a challenge here and what we're looking forward to? Now, it may not be achievable, but I said it would be amazing to record an episode at some point live together.
Yes.
I don't know how we'll do that, but
we'll figure it out. We'll make it work.
I've said, I think episode 500 we should record live. Now, just in case no one has picked it up, Jasmine lives in Texas and I live in outside London. In England, just in case anyone doesn't know where that is. The ability to us record together live is fairly remote, but other people have done it.
Yes.
Yeah. You've come to Europe. I should have met up with you last year when you came to Europe. I should have done it, but anyway. I'm sure, and I've been to America many times. I'm sure we can make it work, but yeah.
We'll make it work. We'll figure something out. We'll figure it out.
Right, is there anything
maybe we'll get there before 500.
Well, yeah, you never know. But I said by 500. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, if you think about it, is at least it's at least 3.5, 4 years away, something like that. So,
yeah.
Is there anything else you're looking forward to, or just is that our only goal at the moment?
No, I'm just looking forward to making more friends.
Yeah. We need to have more guests on.
Yeah. So like I said, Mark is the social one, but I'm coming around to being social. So I've actually enjoyed hanging out with a lot of the Bad Batch friends that we've made so far.
Yeah, we need to have more of them on. We've not had them all on yet. So
yeah.
I did have an idea. I thought I'd just tease you. I have an idea. I won't say which franchise it is, but I know Jasmine's down for it. But on our conversation episode, we want to rank a particular franchise which we both enjoy. So actually we're going to do it for a couple of them, but I think our first one will be it begins with a T, So that's all I'll say.
What
Anyway,
I'm very excited about.
But other than that, for the future, we just want to keep doing it. We enjoy it, and yeah. Right, we're going to bring episode 150 to a close. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up? Or
Thanks for
thanks for that.
being
listening.
bored during COVID and being like, hey, let's make a podcast.
I mean, look, with the trouble with podcasting is not everybody. I'm sure there are many people that listen to us that don't interact, because I'm one of those people. I listen to podcasts and I don't interact with people who throw up social media posts. I don't comment on them. I think, oh, okay, there's a social media post. I'll go listen to their episode.
Yeah.
And if there are people that are listening from day one to now, thank you very much. And if there are people that joined us last week or along the journey, again, thank you very much. And if you've shared it with some friends, and I know, literally, we have people in New Zealand that listen. And there's a lady that messaged us asking us to cover Sweet Tooth season 2 last year, because she messaged us saying, "Oh, you covered Sweet Tooth volume 1. Any chance you could do volume 2?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, we were thinking about it, but okay, now you've asked." We went and did it. I think a week or two later. So just it's been amazing. Also interacting with those people that do listen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't interact with us, please say hello. Like, be lovely to hear from you. And you don't have to write a comment. You can just DM if you want and say hello. Or please comment and say hello.
Though, do you remember when we first started out? Like, we were 5 or 6 episodes in, and someone in your like family circle asked somebody else for like feedback, like, hey, how do you think that we're doing? And her response was, oh, it's fine, but like, I really wish I could see their faces. And I just remember you and me being so confused way back when we first started, because we're like, but it's a podcast. Like, there are no faces in the podcast, but now like we are on YouTube as well. So
last year I didn't upload any of the videos. So again, it was just life. But I have been getting them up weekly this year, and so you can see us now. Right, okay, so going to bring episode 150 to a close, but yeah, just thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for tuning into this one. For our next episode, we're going to finish off the sequel to Mortal Kombat. Which Mortal Kombat is it?
Annihilation.
Yeah, Annihilation, I forgot. Well, we're going to do a Mortal Kombat Annihilation next week, and the week after we're going to do Street Fighter Chun-Li, and then we've got actually quite a very, very long theme that we're going to cover, and this is something I did pitch to Jasmine a while ago. So
yeah,
we're going to probably break it up with some conversations and book clubs because it's a long theme. So right, come back next week for what's probably going to be an awful episode.
Definitely going to be an awful movie. It's
well, it might be a good episode by us, but we may have to consume an awful movie. Right. You can follow us on social media. We're Geeks Unleashed everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or that's known as X now.
And you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Google, Podbean, Apple, Spotify. We are everywhere. So please leave us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Thank you very much for listening. Oh, and good journey.
Good journey.